Okay, we will be looking at lab assignment 1 for DIGM 2350. All the files are located on a server under public. So if you don't have it selected, you would need to click on the desktop to activate it. And I would just do Command K. And then select, if you do this at home, you probably have to type in the whole address because you can connect from any computer. You just need VPN activated. So we select public. Okay, public, connect. Once you do so, then you would go to lab materials and then to the DIGM 2350, and you will have the lab assign 1. And when you select that folder, go ahead and drag it to your desktop or somewhere you would like to save it. Right. So I would put it probably on my desktop so I can have the file, or in my folder. Right. Okay, so we will open up the lab assign 1 PDF file. You can just double click on it to open it. And this assignment has several parts. Really, part A and B is exactly what I will tell you in the lab or this recording. So there's no, it doesn't show you how it's supposed to look like unless you follow what I'm going to be showing you today. Okay? So that's part 1. You'll be coloring. There'll be specific colors and gradients you will apply to this image. We may look at stroke if time allows. Then assignment B, or part B really. You'll be creating all those shapes and then combining them together to create one compound shape. Right? So that's what you're going to do. And that's the thing I'm going to demo in the lab as well. And then for the next part, C, this is where you create, give you instructions. So that's you will do that on your own. I will not demo this. That's why I took screenshots, what I was showing you, so you can see it. The only thing you have to do is show the final product, okay? And then the last part, you will create those icons. Illustrator, it's really a good program to create icons, such as the ones you use for web. And I did a screenshot here, so don't worry about the settings or anything. And I will give you a few tips that may be actually helpful for this assignment. You will be looking at the basic shape Pathfinder. So think about how you would draw all those shapes. Some of them might be using a pencil and some of them straight lines, like this one. So you have to be really good with your hand when you use a pencil for this to curve it. And then this one, I will probably use that line segment tool to draw a straight line. Now here, one thing that may help you right away, shapes, but how would you do the shadow? I don't know if you can see this. This is a gradient. It goes from this color that matches with the background to darker as well. That you overlap and you change the opacity, transparency of that. Okay? And then you have the mouse icon as well and the computer icon. And please notice all the different shapes that are created within that icon. So you can kind of see like the shadow, the different shades, those are separate shapes. Okay? So that is what you would do. You would turn this in. This assignment will be due for me next time you come in. So when you come into the lab, you will submit this assignment. Okay? So you know. So it's not due at the end because we probably will not finish. And I don't want you to finish. I want you to take time on the last part. So with that, let us go ahead and I will close this one and we will start with lab assignment 1. I don't know if you noticed in the instructions, I asked you to create several artboards and this one will start with 1 and we can add to it. Okay? So we will go ahead with only 1 and then add to it. I'll just show you how to save it and how to map your drive. So this is opening for me. Okay, so once we actually launch our file, we're starting with the basic. And what I want you to do right away is to set up your workspace because what we're dealing with is really painting, right? What we're doing is painting. So we're starting with a painting. So go ahead and navigate to Window on top menu. And then go ahead and select Workspace and choose from Workspace Painting. Okay, that's it. Now, if any window that I tell you to open, if you don't see it on the workspace on here, go ahead and put it from here, right? So right now we're just gonna stay with painting, and we will build on that one. So what we're going to do is we will have a little bit of fun coloring. Think of yourself as a little child when you were young, when you used to color things. I hope you were able to. That's what we'll do with some tools. And we have different ways of accessing color here. Notice here we have just the picker when you can just select it. You can also do color themes. It's loading. I have to log in for it. In order for this to be activated, you have to have the login to cloud. And then we also have swatches. The basic swatches are very limited. You don't have many colors in it. But you can access more swatches. Who remembers from the video where you access more swatches? Under the libraries. Not this ones. It didn't open up for me. But under window, scroll towards the bottom. It says Swatch Library. Do you see that? Okay. So we have different kinds of swatches here. From art, celebration, all kinds. So this is where you can access more of them. Now, we will select few. Okay, so let us select it. I will select earth tones. Okay, so I just select those earth tones, and one thing that I really like is the color guide. Now notice the color right now. What it is, this is the color harmony. If you don't know which color looks good with another color, and even you intuitively know which one goes, or when you take our classes, next class 2353, you will learn principles of design. But before that, when you do any drawings and you have to design and you're like, does this really go or does it look like crap? This is where you can check. So those deal with color harmonies, so you'll know which ones to follow. So you know I can use this color and this on these, and they will look okay. Make sense? So use this as your helper, the color guide. Okay. Now other ways of choosing color would be just going to my tools and double clicking, right? And then you have also options on only web colors, so you notice there are less of them. And you also have color swatches. There's many different swatches. Now some of them will deal with process and some with spot colors. I hope you remember the difference. What is the difference between spot and process? Let me give you a hint. It deals with opacity / transparency. So which ones are transparent, use transparent ink? Process. This is what you really, majority of printing that you do will be process printing. Spot is just one color, you slap it on it, it's opaque, so it cannot see another color through it. This is just for pop of color extra. So we will be saving some swatches. So this is kind of few things you can select color some other ways as well. Okay. But what we will do in the beginning, we will actually select, let's see, if you want to make the frog green, you can make it pink, I don't care. So select it. Let's select the face first and then select the shade, and you can use the swatches, just basic, so you know what colors they have. Okay, so we will color it, just the face. Now what I want you to do for the next, I mean, you can do the same one if you want for the stomach or not. I mean, let's do that. But when you get to this point, when you have the legs left, okay, don't use gradient. We're not doing that yet. I know some of you are using gradient. Just use basic shade and swatches. Make sure you have swatches selected. Now one thing, make sure your fill is always selected. And now what we're going to do, we will create our custom swatch that we will save, right? Right now those are all used. So what we will do is double click on that swatch. Double click on here. And then select a different shade. Just create your own. Like it can be different. Can be different shade of green or whatever color you have. Just something that is not under the swatches saved, okay? So just select your own. I will select maybe like a dark green. That's fine. And then do OK. Now this one, it's not saved anywhere. So if I want to reuse it, I can't. Right? I change it for this one. That's okay. And what I will do, there are three ways to save a swatch. One is to drag it to your swatches, or go into your swatches, make sure it's selected from your fill, and click New Swatch. Okay, you click New, you have a dialog box to save it. Notice that the dialog box has some options, such as the name of the swatch. Right now we won't be very descriptive, we just leave this as this one. But notice again, we have either process or spot. So when it comes to printing, how is this going to be printed? Is it going to overlap other colors so we'll show more? Or is it going to be just one color, that's it? Okay. We can just leave it as process for now. Okay. And you can also manipulate it more. If you don't like the shade that you created, you can always adjust it. Okay. And you notice when I adjust it, do you notice the measurements here change? Okay. So do OK. And then you can go ahead and color the rest. You can use the same swatch or a different shade. And the eyes, yeah, there you go. Now we have the little spots here. I will actually select some earth tone shades of yellow to color these. And you can select them at one time, holding the Shift key. And coloring it. So just color it in. They're kind of small. Now, important thing when it comes to anything that you do here, zoom in. Okay, you want to zoom in, especially when you later on looking at details. I cannot work on any illustration unless I zoom in close to it. Notice how big mine is, because I'm really close to it. So I'm just selecting them and coloring it. Right. We will create another swatch for the eyes. So next, I know you're still coloring. So I'll let you finish coloring for a minute. So now we will color the eyes and we will create our own swatch for that shade. So select the eyes and double click the fill and go ahead and select a shade. If you want a bluish shade, that's fine. Just choose, you can have pink eyes, whatever you want. Okay, choose one and do OK. That one I don't like, but we will modify in a minute. So once I do that, I will create a new swatch again in my swatches. Click New. And I will adjust this shade. I think it's too dark. So I will adjust it. I will move some of the cyan down towards yellow. And one thing I want you to change the type of color. So we actually will make the eye spot. That way it will not overlap any ink. Right? It's just, the can of ink you have to get is this one. That's it. The other ones deals with CMYK. This one has to be spot. So create a spot swatch. Make his eyes like green. We'll see how it looks like. So let's do OK. There is my froggy. Okay, so everybody created their spot color. Okay. Next thing we are going to do, we actually will draw a bow tie. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can use a pencil tool. This is where you can practice it. And we will give, this is a him. Even girl can have a bow tie, but I'm going to call him a him. Go ahead and select the pencil tool. Now one thing, I didn't deselect everything. That way I'm not changing the color yet until I draw it. So I will draw the bow tie, just basic, like, doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be good. Right now we just lack lines. But one thing you want to do after you draw it, select it, and we will fill it with red or pink, something bright. And then I want you to add a stroke to it, like black stroke. Okay? So fill it with bright color. I will select like a red Okay, and then change the stroke, select the stroke, and go ahead and make it black, just black stroke. All right. After you do that, you can see how it overlaps. So I can adjust my bow tie, just selecting my selection tool. If you don't want this line to be showing like I have it, depending how you draw it, I will select the point, zoom into it, and just adjust it, okay, with the anchor point. And there's my bow tie. Now, another thing we are going to change is the size of the stroke. Right now it's default 1 point. And how you change it? There are different ways. One way, does everybody have this top menu here? Make sure you select that bow tie, stroke. Okay, you can either go here and change it, or you can just be clicking on here or using your mouse, the middle of your mouse. See how I'm using my mouse? The middle, like the little round. Yeah. So we want to make it thicker now, not too thick. I probably go around 5 points maybe. Okay. You can add the little middle dot to it too. I know some of you did that. Looks cute. Right. Next thing you'll see here, we have distribution. So click, just select different ones to see what happens. So once you change the distribution, then next thing we're gonna change is the brush definition. This is just looking at brushes. And notice here we don't have as many choices. You see this here, and you see the same options right here, right? So it isn't really that much you can do. But you have the libraries. So if I want more, this is the one I'm selecting. I would go under Window. And now if you don't see this, just unclick, click back. Sometimes it gets grayed out. And then we have, notice here, brush libraries, and we have different kinds of brushes. So we would do just like artistic brushes, and the one I'm going to choose might be watercolor. You can choose different one, right? And I will select one of them. Let's see what happens. That looks fine. It's kind of thick though. Any of those brushes seem to come up really thick, and we can adjust it. Notice even though we had 5 points originally, it defaulted to 1. And you can go lower than 1. You can go here and click like 0.5, or scroll your mouse the middle. Let's be very, doesn't want to do it. Or you can type it in. Okay, so select something to adjust it. I just want to see a difference. And make sure the stroke is pretty little. I actually made it 0.5. Right? So it's, you can see the bow tie. Okay, so we are done with a frog. We will move on to the monkey. I hope you like my examples. A drone. So now with the monkey, what we will do, select first is the face. And let's go ahead and be selecting shades. You can choose earth tones, or you select a different palette. You can use a different one. I had students create a purple monkey. That's fine. But we will be making some adjustments in a minute when it comes to gradient. So I will select the face. Oh, by the way, make sure you're not in a stroke. If you are, turn that off. No stroke. Make sure you select the fill. Okay? So click on stroke, none. Select the fill. So you don't put color on the stroke. So I did this shade. Okay. So just watch me for the next part, especially dealing with gradient if you haven't ever done it. Okay, gradient is really important because it allows you to know the basics of working with shades of color. And what is a gradient? What is it? Who can tell me? It's a transition, right, of shade, one color to the next. So with the basic gradient you will learn today, you will build on it. And this image, I know those online you can see me, but images I have in class, this one was done with using gradients. So that's how powerful gradients can be. This is more advanced gradient mesh, but that's what you can do with gradients. So it's important to learn the gradient itself. So when it comes to gradient, you will have the gradient right here. I will collapse this window. I moved it. And we have that gradient panel we can pull out. So I selected his head. So we have that selected. Now notice by default you will style with black and white gradient. That's the default. Okay, so if I click on it, it goes from white to black, right? That's what the default is. Now we actually can select the type of gradient. We can go between linear and radial. Okay. But which one we will choose for him is actually linear gradient. So select linear. Another thing you notice here, this is important, the sliders. We have the middle slider, which is actually the one that separates, how the color transitions. So if I move it, notice what happens to the image. If I move it more towards black, I'm adding more white, right? That's what happens. I'm adding more white. If I move it the other way, I'm changing the location. By that, I'm adjusting the amount of one color, or actually both colors in a way. So I'm going to move it back at 50. Now we can edit those gradients. So let's say I do not want to start with this shade. I want to start with a different shade. So if I double click, okay, does this happen when you double click?
Wait,
like
double click what?
The swatch. Double click this little swatch. Just like this. Now you're like, that's all we have. That's because the gradient is grayscale. So we have to change some options. So look what I'm doing. You don't miss it. I'm going right here and I'm selecting from grayscale. I will move to RGB because that's the color we use on the screen. So RGB. And now you have different shades you can use. So I want you to select like a yellow shade, not bright yellow, but like yellow family. Okay? Something yellow like this. Right? Remember what I did? From here, RGB, select a yellow shade. Now you can also go to your swatches, but notice the swatches you have here are the ones you would save. It doesn't access the earth tones. You would have to drag them out. Right. So everybody good? Everybody has it?
Where do you see it?
Okay, after that, we can go ahead and you can unclick of that window. We'll close it. There's no close button. Just unclick of it. So we're going from yellow to black. Kind of boring. We need to add more shades. So easy thing to add more swatches, or really the little gradient sliders, is to click somewhere to add them. What I will do, I click right in the middle here. You see how my cursor changed to arrow plus? This allows me to add, so I add it. I can add more, but I will start with this one, and again we will change it to brown. Oh, you can change it to purple, I don't care. Just change it to something else. So double click on it, and this time what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into my swatches and select a brownish shade. Okay. Now you can add more swatches. The more swatches you have, you are allowing the transitions to go from one to next to next. It just makes it more, right? So I can add more here. Now what happens if I just add too many and I like, okay, I'm done. The easy way to delete your swatch is drag it off. See? That's it. That's how you delete it. So add one and then delete it just for practice. Okay? Add by clicking, delete it by dragging it off. Now, notice that direction of this is not what I want. I really want him to be darker on top and lighter on the bottom. There are two ways of doing this. One is just probably be -90, I'm guessing. Type it in, selecting it. Or if you don't know how you want to change it, you can use the gradient tool. Gradient tool, the command key is G. Learn your commands because your quizzes will get shorter and shorter, because I'm going to want you to learn your command keys or your shortcut keys. Okay? That's why there'll be less time, because I know if you learn them or not. So G is for gradient, which makes sense. And then notice what happens when I hover over my gradient bar. This is the same thing here, the slider, as you have on here. So we can actually do a few things with this one. We can rotate it. So I'm rotating it up, And I will hold my shift key so it'll be even degree angle. So I went 90. Oh, I was wrong. It's 90. Okay. But notice it's kind of long, and I don't see any black. I really want to go see all the three colors, so I can click on it and then move it, drag it. That's pretty good. Another thing you can adjust, if this is too long for you, you can always drag the corner. You can move it like this. You can drag the corner to make it shorter. You see what I did? So now I can really see the transition from black, kind of grayish shade, and then we're going to brown and yellow. So do what I just showed you, play with it so you can have it this way. What we are going to do for the bottom part, before we move anywhere, we will save this gradient so we can use it. And you can save it in your swatches. Just go into your swatches, and you notice there are several gradients there, and then click new. Okay, click new, and then the menu comes up. For me, it always comes up in a strange location. And we can name this, and I will name it what colors I'm using. Yellow to brown to black. Okay, so name your swatch. Because one time it will show up for us. So if I select another part, it will see it, but later if I want to use it, it's gone. So next you will select the stomach and apply this gradient to it. Notice how I'm doing it. I clicked on it. There are three ways really. One is from the bottom here, another one is from the gradient tool, or from your swatches. So select it. And this time I want you to use the gradient tool, and I want you to go from light to dark. So you will rotate it. It's my rotation. Rotate it like this. Hold the shift key. And notice it's way too long, so I need to see the bottom of my page so I can get to it. And make sure you can see the dark part in the bottom. So you need to zoom out. Go ahead and do so. Drag it out so you can see the black. So mine is pretty, I don't like it like this. Let me see. Kind of play with it, okay, a little bit, so it looks good. I don't want you to have a sharp transition. That's something really smooth. Go ahead. Now we can go ahead and color the arms, and again we'll be using the same gradient. So select your selection tool, click on it, and we select the first one. Now one thing we will change is the color. We want to go again light in the middle and dark on the outside. So I mean, that easy way and hard way. And honestly, I found the gradient tool, rotating it around like this, it's more challenging. What would be another way? How many degrees is this? Do you know? Well, we can try 90. No, that's not it. It's 180. Is it negative or positive? Negative. So I just changed my angle to negative 180 degrees to go from light to dark. That was so easy. You see what I did? Selected that arm, put my gradient, and I changed that angle to negative 80. Now don't get lost for those who will, because I'm going to continue. You will have the recording. Okay, so now we'll select now the second one. Same thing, select my gradient, but this time I'm happy with it. Let's leave it alone, okay, because it goes from dark on the outside. Right, so you should have gradient on several parts. Now the one that you don't need gradient is for the pause. So you can select all of them at one time holding the shift key, and we can make them all the same color. Navigate to your earth tones that you pulled up or whatever swatches and change the shade. Okay, actually maybe lighter. There. And the tail, select the tail, change it to something. Then we will select the inside the ears. Okay. Something like this. We will change the eyes in a minute, and that will be a technique for that one. So just color this in solid color. Okay. Now the eyes, we will create a different gradient as well for that one, but we will start with swatches. So go ahead and select the eye. You can select one at a time or both. And go ahead, navigate to your swatches. Do you notice that by default you have 3 gradients? by default. That's the one we created. So actually, that was a whole. We will select the one that's called Fading Sky. The one that goes from blue to nothing, like this. Okay, like that. Now, for the type of gradient we're using will be radial. Okay, so it's round. That's for the eye. So I want you to select the eye. For those who are a little behind, just select and change it to radial. Select that shade. Now, notice something about here. Do you notice something different here with the color? This means there is transparency. So it's actually going from the same shade of solid to 0% opacity, means being transparent. And how I can tell you? Because I see those little dots, and also I can double click, right? And I notice when I double click on that slide gradient, it tells me opacity is 0%. That means it's not visible. So I can actually change it to 100%. So you can see now it's solid, right? So again, I will do 50%, and we will give him some kind of rabies eyes, red eyes, okay? Or vampire eyes, whatever you call them. You can give him different ones. I like red because it's visible when we grade it, right? So red, 50% transparency. So select that. Now you can also have transparency options when you do, so gradient, remember that for doing some of the shapes that need transparency for your part 4. And also you also have opacity settings here, but on top, but they affect the whole shape, not only that one gradient. Okay? So then we have this one. Let us go ahead and save this gradient. So go ahead and navigate to your swatches and save it. And we will name it, I just don't name it baby size. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. And then select the second eye and then do the same thing. And we are done with part 1.